Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We are sitting here Thursday morning and we still have plenty to talk about regarding what we learned from this Miami Hurricanes team Sunday night in their win against Notre Dame. Now, I spent most of the early portion of the week talking about the defense. Look, I thought that was a big storyline, especially in the first three quarters. As much as the national media wanted to talk about Carson Beck, talk about freshman Malachi Toney, we go and talk about him over the next couple of minutes. I thought this defense played exceptional football in the first three quarters. The run fits were really good. It became very, very clear that you have some special difference makers at all three levels. I'll say this. I don't think there was a better player and more dominant player in the country week one than what we saw from Ruben Bain coming off the edge. That was one of my big takeaways. When you flip the script and look at the offense, look, I think it's important to remind ourselves that was probably the best defense that Miami will see all regular season long. That is a phenomenal defense that's very well coached. There's a lot of NFL talent. One thing you learned right off the bat is, number one, this offense is going to continue to get better. And keep in mind, this is Carson Beck still getting his feet wet. This is a new wide receiver room with your wide receiver one, who is a reclassified true freshman. As good as Malachi Toney was Sunday night against Notre Dame, he's going to get better as the season goes on. You got a lot of other young wide receivers, whether that be Josh Moore, whether that be JoJo Trader, that we think can come on as well. As good as it was, I still think there's some room for improvement. We'll talk about some things that I don't think were good enough that I think can get better. My biggest takeaway before we get nitty gritty, though, is you saw the identity of this Miami Hurricanes offense on full display in that first drive of the third quarter. Miami took the lead 14-7 going into half thanks to an exceptional catch by CJ Daniels. You had the opportunity to kind of choke out Notre Dame to start that third quarter. Miami goes 12 plays, 75 yards, scores a touchdown, 8 minutes of game time. You took the lead 21-7 with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. That is how you close out a game in the second half. Now, the frustrating part was Miami kind of parked the bus in the fourth quarter and allowed Notre Dame to get back into that game. That is certainly something to clean up, and we'll talk about it. That's what we expect. If you ask Mario Cristobal, hey, close your eyes and envision the kind of offense you want to go out and compete for a national championship, what we saw in that first drive of the third quarter, that's probably what Mario Cristobal is envisioning. It kind of eerily reminded me from what we saw from that Michigan team in 2023 that won a national championship. They would routinely take over games in the second half just because they were a little bit overwhelming when it came to line of scrimmage play. That's what you saw from Miami in that third quarter drive. And I think that's going to be something that will translate the rest of the season. Let's just be frank about it. There's not a team in the ACC outside of Clemson that can even hang, in my opinion, with what Miami has on the offensive line. Second takeaway is you figured things out that will work for you routinely. And this is the difference between good offenses and great offenses. Good offenses have good players, but they don't necessarily have things that they can rely on all the time. The great offenses do. Miami has that. Like Malachi Toney against man coverage, that was a cheat code against one of, if not the best secondaries that you see in the country. How about running behind the right side of the offensive line? Francis Maui-Noah and Inez Cooper were absolutely imposing their will all game long in the run game. When it's 3rd and 1 and you got to go move the chains, run behind those two cats because they're going to get the job done. One of the things that I really realized upon rewatching this game was, hey, you got things that are going to work pretty damn consistently. Those were some of my big takeaways. Want to work our way through the depth chart, talk about the good, talk about the things that we think can get better, because that is an important conversation. I ain't just getting up here to be a jerk and be nitpicky. If you're Mario Cristobal and you're Miami, the goal is to continue to get better as 2025 goes on, because this team, if they can find themselves in the college football playoffs, they going to have a chance to compete with anybody in the country. So getting better as 2025 goes on, going to be crucial for this football team. Before we get into it, as always, the Miami Hurricane fans, appreciate you guys. Would love to hear, because I know if you're a Miami fan watching this on a Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, chances are you've watched this game a couple of times back as well. Let it fly with some players that caught your eyes I'm going to try to give love to all the players that I have in my notepad right now. If I'm sleeping on somebody, let it rip. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We say this all the time, but the amount of support the Miami fans continue to show the boys is amazing. It's one of the reasons why we talk so much about this football team. So appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's get into it. We'll get to Carson Beck. We'll get to Malachi Toney. This offensive line is a weapon. And it's not just the right side. I thought the right side was absolutely dominant Sunday night against Notre Dame. This offensive line in general is really good. Number one in pass protection. Carson Beck only under pressure 18% of dropbacks. That's really clean. Against the Notre Dame front, that's really good. Number two, I don't think the box score will reflect it. I think it's a 3.1 yards per carry Miami finished the night with as a team. The offensive line was much better in the run blocking department than what showed up in the box score. Now, I think you have to give a lot of credit to Notre Dame's second and third level defenders. They got really good linebackers and they got really good safeties, especially when it comes to fitting the run. I thought Miami was moving this defensive line all night. It's going to be hard to run against the Notre Dame defense that has the kind of linebackers and safeties that Notre Dame has. The run game, the offensive line in the run blocking department, in my opinion, was much better than what we put in the box score. Number two story of the night, Malachi Toney is that true wide receiver one. Let me put his performance into perspective. He made one of the best secondaries and one of the best defenses in the country. He made them change their defensive game plan. Right? And Notre Dame wants to run a ton of man coverage. In the second half, they kind of stopped doing it because they couldn't cover Malachi Toney. Like they went to a lot more zone in the second half because Malachi Toney was routinely beating up this secondary and man coverage. We were wondering if this wide receiver room could separate in man coverage against this Notre Dame secondary. Malachi Toney answered that question in a big time way. I can't tell me he's a reclassified 17-year-old freshman and absolutely put belt to bottom to a Notre Dame secondary that's full of guys that will be playing in the NFL. His understanding of the sport and his composure and his patience with running routes, it is absolutely elite. You have a guy that when it's 3rd and 4 and you need a pass catcher to go make a play, you have that guy very similar to what Xavier Restrepo was for Miami last year. I thought the other wide receivers were really good too, right? CJ Daniels, obviously, it wasn't just that catch that he made getting open, being sure-handed. I mean, he had 5 targets, caught all 5 of them. Thought you saw some good things from Keelan Marion. Here's the story is, can Miami continue to foster Joshua Moore along? Can you foster JoJo Trader along? Specifically when it comes to, hey, can we find more shots down the field? Miami really only threw a couple of, I think they only threw one go ball to Keelan Marion. They ended up drawing a pass interference on that game-winning drive where you kicked a field goal. You look at Joshua Moore, you look at JoJo Trader and say, hey, we're trying to find a little bit more verticality in that offense. I look at Joshua Moore and say, that's a big body that can move. Can he be a guy that can become, as the season goes on, a guy that can stretch the field a little bit for Miami? What we got answered here was that these wide receivers around Carson Beck are good enough. And I only think they're going to get better because you got a bunch of new faces through the portal and you got a bunch of young wide receivers who are year 1, year 2 guys that are only going to get better in 2025. How much better can these wide receivers get is going to be a storyline to monitor. I think they blew away. I mean, Malachi Toney, we knew Malachi Toney was good. I don't think anybody expected him to be that good as a freshman, at least game 1. I think he got some of those question marks at wide receiver answered. What about Carson Beck? I think he was sharp. This was never going to be a game where Carson Beck threw for 400 yards, right? Especially with the wet conditions. I thought, number one, I don't think they blew a single protection up front. That's a shout out to Alex Mirabal and a veteran offensive line. It's also a shout out to Carson Beck, getting them into the right checks and the right pass protections. I thought a lot of the operation was really clean from Carson Beck, especially a guy that, he could not participate physically going back to the spring. That's one of the things you knew you were going to get from Carson Beck coming in through the portal. This is a guy that's going to be able to manage a game. And I thought he did that. Ball was coming out quick, didn't really put the ball in harm's way, didn't really try to force much. And again, this was a Notre Dame secondary that was not going to give you a lot of easy stuff. So you had to be patient. Last year, Carson Beck maybe tried to force the issue a little bit at Georgia. Thought he was really patient and took what was there. I thought Carson Beck was sharp. One thing I'll say to be critical, there were some opportunities to spit the ball to the tight end to the tight ends that I felt like maybe Carson missed. That's another way. You talk about like things to improve. I think he can get the tight ends more involved in this offense. Last thing that I really liked is Marty Brown going to help this team. And we weren't sure. We liked CharMar Brown coming from North Dakota State. We weren't sure how much he was going to play. When Jordan Lyle went down with that ankle, you had to lean on CharMar Brown a lot. He's a guy that, hey, we know Miami wants to run the football 40 times, right? They want to run the football 40 times a game. I would be surprised if they are running the football less than 30 times in a game. Having a kid like him that runs the ball as physically as he does, along with Mark Fletcher, I mean, you talk about wearing teams down. CharMar Brown's going to help this team in a very big way, especially in the third quarter, fourth quarter, second half when you're trying to really grind a team down into the dirt. Things that need to improve. And I'll say the tight ends, and that's not in the route running department. They got to inline block better. Elijah Lofton as a freshman, I thought was awesome as an inline blocker. Didn't think he was very good against Notre Dame. That is a huge part of what Miami wants to do because they want to run some 12 personnel. They want to have these tight ends on the field, but we also want to run the football. So if you want to get your tight ends on the field a lot, you have to be better in the inline run blocking department. Here's the thing with Elijah Lofton. It was a tricky game for him because the guys he was trying to block, they're really good football players, especially guys like Kingston Biliam-Mursat, really good. And so I'm not trying to be too critical of the tight end play, especially in the run blocking department. Go back and watch that game a couple of more times. There were some runs that had the opportunity to hit for a little bit bigger that would have hit if we were executing our blocks with our tight ends a little bit better. Got to figure out a way to find some more explosive plays, especially if you want to run the football as much as you do. You want to try to be explosive. Miami's long run of the night was 15 yards. How can you do that? I think that's up to Shannon Dawson. And here's the other thing is why aren't we working a little bit more play action? If you're going to run the football, they ran the football 38 times in this football game. Why are we not using that to our advantage when we're trying to throw the football? I mean, Carson Beck, 15% of his dropbacks were off of play action. If you are running the amount that Miami is going to run, use play action to help your passing attack. And I felt like we didn't really get to that all that much. Those are some things that kind of popped to me that I think Miami to maybe continue to improve upon. It's a really clean football game, especially week one, and that's big. And here's the last thing is Miami getting a taste of winning those kind of games. It feels important. I don't need to tell Miami fans this. We've been in a lot of these moments, and a lot of those moments haven't gone Miami's way over the last decade. To have a game where it gets tight in the fourth quarter, the ball is kind of snowballing in the opposite direction, and you figure out a way to win, that matters. And not to go back to that Michigan team in 2023, but that's kind of how it was for Michigan too. Like Michigan was a good team before 2023, but when it got to those big games, especially against like Ohio State, they always seem to figure out a way to lose. When they got a taste of winning those games, got a little bit more confidence in their ability to win those games, that's when you saw it flip. Can this flip for Miami? It is going to be a big storyline. Hey, a lot of things to improve upon, a lot of freshmen and second-year guys that I think can continue to get better as football players. This is a team that's built to get better throughout 2025. If they can go do that, this team's going to compete for not just a playoff spot, but a national championship. We'll close it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.